Thank you, Shalay. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you for a room full of colleagues that has made my heart like pitter-patter right now. I appreciate you all coming out today, and to the students, especially my students who are here. I thank you. I'm very humbled to be before you and talk to you about what I do outside of teaching at this school. Just bear with me, because if it was just students, I wouldn't be nervous, but my colleagues are here, so I'm nervous. So I do get nervous. I think people don't know that about me, that I do get nervous. Okay, where do I start? I'm gonna walk around a little bit and talk. So I would love to see your name on TV one day. That is a thing that my great-grandmother said to me when I was just a little bitty girl growing up in Brooklyn, and I used to watch TV with her. She was addicted to shows like Wheel of Fortune, and we didn't have Jeopardy back then, but we used to watch I Love Lucy, reruns of I Love Lucy. And I think that's where I was first intrigued by storytelling, and definitely by this kind of thing she put on me, which was, I want you to do something important. I want to see your name on TV one day. And little did I know, subliminally, I guess it stayed with me throughout my education. I grew up in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, to working class parents. And my dad is Black American. My mom is Cuban American. And so I got a little bit of both worlds growing up in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, which we also nicknamed Little Jamaica, but now has a lot of different Caribbean immigrants that settled there. So I had a pretty full background. I went to Catholic school for 12 years of my life. Grade school was right across the street from me, so I didn't have to go far. And so we had a pretty close-knit community. And if you know Black people, we got stories, right? So there's lots of things that happen, right? So growing up, I had a very interesting background. My parents divorced when I was about 10 years old. So, disappointment very early on, being afraid very early on. You go through a range of emotions as a kid trying to adapt to a life you don't know what's going to happen. But I did know this. I knew that, I'm going to sit down for a second. I knew very early on that I wanted to do something that got me out of where I was. And when I say that, I don't say that because it was bad where I was. I say that because I think I wanted to do something more for my family. I saw how hard my mom worked. And I'm pretty sure I was like, I wanted to do something that made them proud of me. So I'd always been an inquisitive person or nosy. My nickname growing up was like Snoopy, because I would snoop around and take a look around and try to see what was going on. I still ask, why? Shalay can attest to that. She'll tell me something. I was like, why? Why? And Shalay's like, I don't know. I said, well, didn't you ask the person why? Like, doesn't that naturally come? You want to know why something happens? And she's like, no, only you want to know that. So I just always had this thing about me that wanted to know how human beings ticked, And so I went to undergrad. I went to Stony Brook, and I wasn't sure. They didn't have, at that time, a journalism major. They didn't really have a creative arts major. But so, they had a liberal arts major, so you could put it together. So that's pretty much what I did. And I minored in journalism. Still wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I liked two things. I liked sports, and I liked just creating hearing my own words. So I was writing music, I was writing poetry, just really trying to figure it out. I got a job working as a receptionist at PBS. It was my first job out of school. And I had a chance to, PBS 13 is where I was. And I had a chance to like walk around and try to see what everybody was doing, trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. I volunteered for McNeil Lear at night, pulling copy and, trying to see what was coming across the wire and stuff. And then one day, one of my girlfriends who worked with me was like, hey, I'm going on vacation. I'm going to Los Angeles. And I was like, I want to go to Los Angeles. So we went to Los Angeles together, and her sister at the time had been dating a guy who was a writer on a show called A Different World. A Different World was a spinoff of The Cosby Show. And it was about this fictitious HBCU called Hillman. And I just remember we were all, people my age, were all, really engrossed with this film, with this series, because we kind of saw ourselves there. It was one of the few black shows that was on television at the time. So we went to the show taping, and I sat in the audience, and then I saw these black people down on the stage holding these things, which I later learned were scripts. And I was just like totally looking at them the whole time and not actually the show, like, what are they doing? Like, what is this? And so then after the show, my girlfriend introduced me to the guy, the writer there, and I had, of course, a million questions. And I was just like, what is this? What are you doing? Like, I want to know all about this. Like, what is this? And he said, okay, I'll tell you everything. So he introduced me to what it meant to be a writer, what the process was, and I immediately was like, I want to do that. I said, this is what I want to do. And so he's like, okay, well, if you want to do it, take this class, take that class, buy this book, and then try to write a script, based on, learn the craft and try to write a script. So I was all about 22, 23 years old, something like that. And I came back to New York, and I would work my hours at my job. I had an office. I was fortunate enough. At that time, I had gotten promoted up, and I was working in co-productions. And after I finished my job, I would just close my office door, and I would stay there for hours just reading or writing until I finally got a script together. And then I looked at that time, everything was snail mail. I looked up the different agencies that, were literary agencies at the time. And I just made photocopies on PBS's dime. And Sure did. Used their paper and used their mailroom. And that was back then when you can't do stuff like that now, right? Before they started understanding that that's what people were doing and need a code to put in like our school. So I mailed like scripts everywhere. And I got about 10 people who wrote me back and was like, oh, we'd like to meet you. The thing that I did is not only did I steal from PBS, but I also lied about where I lived. One of my relatives lived in Los Angeles, so I asked them if I could use their address, And so they said yes. So I put it like if I lived in Los Angeles and said, this is my work. And I got 10 people who replied and talked them through them. I had 5 meetings. So I was like, yeah, I can be there next week and meet with you. And so I came out. I didn't know. When I tell you I was green, I knew nothing. But I always tell my students, this is the time to just take chances, right? When you're young and you don't know better, because it's when you get older that you get really nervous like I am, like speaking to colleagues, even though you do that every day of your life. And it's like you have to take that ignorance and just jump sometimes, right? And just do it. And I was just jumping. So I went out, I met with these people, pretended to know what I was talking about, did not know. And I got 3 offers from lit agents to represent me. Now, there's a lot that went into that, right? I was at the right place at the right time, the right race, the right gender. There wasn't a lot of me out there at that time. So people were interested in, at that time, diversifying the business. And, they felt that they could market me probably a lot better than if I was a white man. So I knew all that stuff. So I got an agent. It was fantastic. I was like, now I gotta move. I came home. I was like, wow, I really don't live here. So now I have to decide what I'm gonna do. And so I came back home and I gave myself 6 months and I saved money. I actually took a second job working at the Millennial Hotel that was destroyed during the World Trade bombing. I was working at night. I would do my day job, so I'd do 9 to 5, and then I would go to the Millennial Hotel from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. I had 2 full-time jobs so that I could save money. I worked in the order taking department, so room service at night. Like you call down, I just answered the phone and took the orders and put them through, and they got their food delivered. So, but it was a full-time job to save enough money to move to Los Angeles because my parents didn't have money, so I made that decision. And I moved. I had a whole whopping $2,000 and I packed my stuff. And at that time guys, this is the crazy part. There was no one checked luggage limit on the airline. So I literally put my life on the plane. Literally my life. My TV, my Stairmaster. I am not lying. Okay, and as many suitcases as I had. I just put them all on. It was free. So I moved and I bought a stick shift. Had never driven a stick shift in my life. I bought it. My friend had to drive it off the lot. And then I went home and I practiced. We lived in a cul-de-sac. I was staying with my cousin and there was a cul-de-sac there. And I drove around. I was determined I was going to drive to church the next day. So I taught myself how to drive in a cul-de-sac, a stick shift that I'd never driven before in my life. And I drove myself to church the next day. And now I love a stick shift. It's just like the only way to drive for people who have ever driven a standard before. And I just went for it. I applied. I got a temp job. I was working temp at Walt Disney Company, just, regular secretarial stuff, answering the phones. And I was fortunate enough to learn about this writers group. And I joined this writers group. And it was the best thing that ever happened because we read each other's stuff. We got better together. And then I applied to the Warner Brothers program for new writers. Again, at this time, I was probably about 26. And about 1,000 people apply. They take in 30, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the people who they picked. And went through the program where they mentor you because what they are hoping is to take these new writers and put them on their shows as staff writers. And so that's what ended up happening. I did the program, and I ended up on a show called Living Single, which was a Warner Brothers program as well. So it was my first staff job being on Living Single, which at the time, culturally, was like the #1 show for Black people, right? So people loved the show, and I was like a little mini star because, so much so that I came home one day to visit, and I was going out with my girlfriends, and they were like, him and Han wanting to make all these stuff. I was like, what's going on? Are we going to the club? What are we doing? Like, we have to make one more stop. I was like, what? So we went in, and they rented out this place. They had this big surprise party for me, and they were showing my episode there. And so I was like this rock star, and I didn't even know when they called me and told me that I'd gotten the job. I hung the phone up and I called my sister, and I was like, how the hell did these people hire me? I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I have no idea. Why did they hire me? I was more upset that they made me an offer because I was petrified. And the thing that you learn when you go there is that everybody's petrified, right? Everybody's trying to figure it out. And you're no different than everybody. I felt like, oh, okay, I'm just as smart as that person. They're not like really smart. Like I could do what they're doing. And you just kind of figure it out as you go. And I've got to tell you, that's what I've been doing my whole career, is kind of figuring it out as I go. The one thing I tell my students is, don't limit yourself. You just never know what opportunity is going to present itself. Don't say no because you're scared. I can't tell you how many jobs that I've taken that I felt exactly the way that I felt when I took the living single job. I had no idea what I was doing, including this job here. I had taught at ASU before I taught here, but I taught specifically script writing for them. When I came here, I was teaching a number of other courses, which could be daunting, and so creating courses and those kinds of things. And really, I was just an adjunct there. Once I became full-time here, then it became really learning my way here. But the biggest thing I would say from my journey is I've done lots of things, from producing documentaries to writing printed articles for magazines to working in promo departments and creating promos, to teaching, to writing on sitcoms, to then transitioning to working in dramas. And the thing that people are always like, you're not scared? I'm like, I am terrified. It's like, it's not even about not being scared. And we talked about this at the last talk that we had a couple of weeks with the students. And it's about doing it in spite of being scared, right? So that's the definition of courage, right? Is just going forward. I think the voice of my grandmother has stayed in my ear that this is a mission that she gave me when I was a little girl that I was supposed to do. And so it just is the thing that guides me. I just steady myself and then you just go for it. So that is how I got started. I started writing in sitcom. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Writing in sitcom, you have to literally keep your job every day. So you go in, you're sitting in a room with about 6 or 7 other writers, and you literally pitch on sometimes episodes, like, what are we going to do this week? Let's write about this. Sitcom is a little different because most times it's independent of, you don't have, it's not a series arc that's going on. You can write standalone episodes. So we would pitch on what we thought would be a funny premise for a show that day, that week. And honestly, every day, though these people you love that you're working with, you're trying to take them out every day. Because you have to outshine them to keep your job. It's almost like a job interview every day. Because literally the end of the day, your boss is thinking, well, who really, knocked it out of the park today? So you want to be driving home thinking, I got 2 jokes in today, or they chose my idea for a show today. And then you also have the opposite experience, right? Where it's just like, oh my God, I haven't gotten anything all week, I'm going to get fired. So it's a range of emotions. It's taxing. When you finally make it to show night, and on a sitcom you have a live audience that you shoot the show in front of. If they do the first take and nobody laughs of your thing, so you're in a corner with the other writers, the showrunner is like, okay, another joke quickly. And you literally got to sit there and, like you're a machine, and spit out jokes. So you learn the rhythm of a joke very quickly. It's all formulaic. I teach a sitcom writing course here, and the students are always freaked out, but I always go, you can do it. You can do it. It's just formulaic. Think about this rhythm, and eventually they will get it. But it can be daunting because you, in that little huddle, you also want your joke to be the one, and then you don't want it to be the one, because if you give it and it doesn't land, then that's a whole other thing, right? So then the boss is back and is like, okay, that sucked. What's the other one? So I would say sitcom writing is not for the faint of heart, okay? Because you are dancing every second of the day. And you are there working very, very long hours. So one of my friends who I started in the Warner Brothers program with jumped ship. She went to drama. She was the first one who went over into the drama world. And she came back to us and was like, ladies, you got to get out of sitcom. We go home at 7 o'clock in drama. We're like, 7 o'clock? What is that like? Because in sitcom, you have your what we call our run-throughs, which is the studio or the network comes and they see the show in rehearsal up on its feet. And then they give you what we call notes. So they'll say, we don't like that scene. Or can you make the story more about this or more about that? And you're thinking, we're about to shoot in front of an audience in 2 days. Now you want to change the whole thing? And yeah, they do. So after the run through, which happens like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, the writers go back to the writer's room and we sit, we cry, we eat, we drink, and then we go to work and try to what we call addressing the notes and do a rewrite. And so you can be there until midnight, you can be there till 2 o'clock in the morning, pitching on one joke, trying to get that one joke right. And if you're a lady, it's taxing, right? Like men can date forever till you're 80, right? Men have babies till they're 80. When you're a woman, it's a little bit like, oh my God, is this my life? Am I never gonna go on a date again? Because all I do is work 24 hours a day. And so when my girlfriend jumped ship and she went to drama, she was like, you go home at 7, you can have dinner, you can go on a date. So we all jumped over to drama. And drama has been a blessing because in sitcom, you have a germ of an idea that's really a joke, and you create 25 minutes based around that joke. In drama, you can really tell a more sustainable story. So I fell in love with telling stories in drama because I felt like you can go through a range of emotions. Life isn't always funny. Though you like making people laugh, I also wanted to make people cry. I also wanted to make people think about how they treat other people, how the world could be if we would try. And you have more room to do that in what we call a 1-hour drama. So I've been writing 1-hour drama now for, I don't know, maybe 17 years. I've been in the 1-hour drama realm. And so, it has sustained me. I've written on medical dramas. I'm currently working on a crime drama, which is called Truth Be Told on Apple TV+. And it's one of my, besides Living Single, which until now, was probably the show that made me most proud of working on because it was such a big thing for the culture. This is probably, for me, the most satisfying job that I've had because of the story we're telling this season. We're telling the story of how the media doesn't cover when Black and brown girls go missing. And we always focus on the blonde hair girl when she goes missing, and she could be on the news for, a month straight until we tire of the story or we find her, right? I think you guys remember Gabby Petito 2 years ago where we followed her tragedy. I mean, it's a tragedy, her tragic story for a long time, but there are thousands of Black and brown girls that go missing every year. About 19,000 a year, believe it or not, that are rarely or never covered by the media. So we took this on this season. There were 8 of us, 8 writers. So we'd gather around a table every day with lots of snacks and food. That's why I'm not skinny. And, and we just sit there all day and just try to come up with what would make a good, not only episode, but season arc, right? And so when you write on a mystery, you know where you want to land. That's where you start from. Where do we want at the end of this season to be, right? And then it's working backwards. And it's really, the job is to kind of hide the ball for 10 episodes. I'm writing on a 10-episode show. So just when you think you know who the person is that did it, you don't, right? So that is the hardest thing in the world to do because you got to still connect the dots, but at the same time, you don't want it to be obvious. So we're telling the story about basically sex trafficking and who is behind this specific sex trafficking ring. Has anybody here seen the show? Anybody? Nobody seen the show? Oh, okay. So I'm going to see if I can show you. So this doesn't necessarily focus. The show stars Octavia Spencer. Hopefully you guys know who that is. She is an Oscar winner, and so she's the star of our show. And let's just pray what I'm about to show works. Let's start there. This is Old West Valley.
Marcus isn't here. Actually, I came to see you. You have some news about Trini? Not yet. I brought you something. I often tell a little white lie about cooking. I really only know how to make two things, but a veggie omelet and banana pudding, a mama's recipe. Cravings, thank you. And the potassium is good for lowering blood pressure. Thank you. I understand your angry. You know, I tell a white lie too. That I've got it all under control. Life is good. The truth is, most days I'm just trying to figure out how to keep it all together, including my family. And you helped me make a decision to save them. You live your life out in the open. And I admire it. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at God. How could he let this happen to my baby? She'll come home, Serena. I know. I know she will. But what happens when she does? She wouldn't even tell me about Aubrey. How will I ever know what she's really going through? If you can't pray for yourself, can I pray for you? She's gonna come up.
Real.
Serena, no lies told right there, okay? So those are two scenes that I wrote personally, and I love both of those scenes because there's so much of me all up in them, okay? So first of all, Serena is his backup choice. It didn't work out with him and Poppy, but they've never talked about it before. But now that they're in this like pressure cooker of things and kind of blaming each other because their child has gone missing, she goes really low, right? And she's like, yeah, don't act like I don't know you're just your backup, right? That you really love another woman. And that other woman is the one who shows up at the door with the banana pudding. Now, banana pudding is really deep to my heart because my grandmother did teach me how to make banana pudding. So I make sure I get my little things in there. And if anybody knows me, they know I'm a person of faith. So I don't think that anyone can have their child go missing and not begin to question God about why something like that would happen to them. So I thought it was important that she was like, I can't even pray. I can't even, like, what is this? Why would God do this to me? So that's when you get a chance to kind of really put your own special sauce into things. And I enjoy that. I must say, and then Octavia put that scene where she brings the banana pudding, she put that on her IG as one of her favorite scenes in there. So I was like totally in heaven. So I'm really proud of it. And so that's where I am. Any questions? Sure.
So I always wonder about the research. I mean, do you have to do a lot of research?
Absolutely.
I mean, how do you find time to do all that?
So we have assistants that give us a pile of stuff every morning. They'll come in and be like, we found this. And then we also hire consultants. So we dug deep into the world of trafficking because, there's nonprofits that are out there trying to rescue girls. So we went and they would zoom into our room and we tell us everything about the world. So they tell us all this because we have to be accurate, right? We don't want to just make stuff up. So yeah, a lot of research goes into it.
So how much time do they give you between putting it out there and the conception?
So it's a long process.
Yeah.
So I started in that writer's room in September of 2021. And we didn't start shooting our episodes until about April of 2022. So we spend like the first 10 weeks doing what we call breaking the season. So we have whiteboards just like this, right? And we literally will have each character of the show, and we put down what we want to be their arc for the season, where we want them to start, we want them to be at the end of the season, especially Poppy, Octavia Spencer's character. And then we literally have like 10 boards for 10 episodes. This is what happens in each episode. And then when that episode is up for that week, we have another board that we bring out, and we literally break the episode. This is what's going to happen in the first act. This is going to happen in the second act. This is where we want to land. And once we know what the breaking is, then it goes to the individual writer. And then, so like if it's me, I take it, and then I write what's called an outline. The outline's about 12 pages, where I basically go into more detail what happens and what the emotional stuff is. You really outline it. Actually, we have 3 acts in this particular show. And so, which means that they're like 3 big moments in the, like, lead to a big moment, lead to another big moment, and then lead to the end. And then once that's done, we give it to the room. Everybody tears it apart. You cannot be of the faint of heart. Don't be married to anything, because people always think, again, their job is to look like they're brilliant, so they're going to rip you apart, right? So you just have to like stay centered in, I know my shit is good. I know my shit. Because people are going to be like, well, I think you should. I think you should. I think you should. And well, ultimately, it's up to the showrunner to say, well, I think we should either keep what's here or, you know, see if you can implement what Bonnie said in this part right here. So, so that's how that works. And then once we send that to the network and to the studio, and they do the same thing, rip it apart, give you notes, tell you what to do. You hand in a revision, and then you're off to script. And then you go through the same process. You give it to the room, they give comments, you do a rewrite, it goes to the studio network, they give comments, you do rewrites. And even when it goes to the stage to shoot, so Gabrielle Union is not the nicest person in the world. So several times she's come to set, it's like, I'm not saying that. It's like, girl, what? We hired you to say the lines. What do you mean you're not saying that? I don't think my character should say that. Okay, we created your character. So if we say your character says that, how are you going to tell her she's not going to say that? We made you up, okay? So we go through a lot of that. And so a lot of times you have to rewrite on the set, because the actor just is like, well, I'm sure that I would never say this. And you're just like, okay. So so you have to go off, and you still want some integrity because you had a plan. Like it's like a puzzle, right? So them not saying that might screw something up later. So you try to change the words so it looks like you've given them what they want, but keep the same sentiment. It's like the worst thing in the world because you just hate them. You're just like, I hate you. Just stay in your lane and do your job. So that's the answer. Any other questions? Yes.
First off, that definitely sounds like Gabrielle Union.
Yes, she is a problem. But one season and out, she was our guest. We stunt, which is like have a big actress. We had Kate Hudson last year, and the guy from Breaking Bad was on the first year. So we pair a big star with Poppy with a big case of the season. So Gabrielle Union was our person. There was some research that Black women are really into true crime stories. So they wanted to try to pull more Black viewers to the show. So they thought they could do it with Gabrielle Union. Sorry, your question?
Well, you actually kind of are going in that direction when you mentioned that, because my question is, obviously in the 90s, you were an example of, I think, the industry wanting to show that they had become more diverse. But in your opinion, do you think that we're progressively getting better in the industry, or it's like roughly about the same, or do you feel like, where do you stand on how diverse the industry is, giving voices to not just Black representation, but to all races? Or like,
it's a really good question. So the business has changed so much since I started. Like when I started, we only had like, I don't know, like maybe 13 options of stations. Now we have like, I don't know, over 100 stations that do original content. I think there's 500 original content shows out, which is like crazy. So there's definitely more opportunities. So there's more jobs per se. So before, there were so few jobs that Black and brown people definitely got excluded, or we were ghettoized, as I call it. You could only write on the Black shows, which is another reason I wanted to get out of comedy, because you couldn't get hired, like on Friends, if you were a Black writer. You had to go to like a Black show. Though it shouldn't have been that way, that's what was happening. But in drama, it's a lot different, primarily because at the time there weren't any Black dramas on TV. So if you wrote drama, you just ended up on a white show. I would say it still happens to a lesser degree, where it's still hard for people of color to get jobs. But again, there's so much content now that, you know, there's a lot more. I mean, there's a lot of Black and brown content on right now. So, you know, it's a little bit better is what I would say. I have some of the best representation out there. I'm with CAA, which is one of the biggest literary agencies out there. And I have a pretty good management, and it's still hard to get jobs. If I was a white man, I would be working. But as a Black woman, it's, you know, you definitely are challenged. But I am a person who's of the belief, and I do this so I can stay sane, is that what's meant for me, I will get. You know, if it's not meant for me, then no. At the same time, I push back against the racism that goes on in the system, but what I try not to do is take it too personally, because that could derail you and you'll just be off your mark. You just have to understand that you have to work harder. I work really hard, you know, and that's the thing I tell people who are trying to get into the business. It's not for everybody, because you have to be so committed that it sucks up your entire life. It really does. But I can't imagine not doing it. So I tell people that's how you have to be. You have to imagine not doing it. Any other questions quickly? Nobody has any other questions?
What is it like inside Warner Brothers Studios?
You mean the physical place?
Yeah.
It's like a dream. You know, you see it on TV. You walking into these big doors onto the sound stage. You're like a kid every time you do it. You really are. I never take it for granted. I feel like one of the most fortunate people. You know, when I got sick about, I don't know, it's gotta be about 12 years ago. And when I was sick, I remember like they didn't know I was really sick. They didn't know if I was gonna make it. And I remember having a conversation with God. And I was like, well, you know what? My ride this far has been pretty amazing. I've done some pretty amazing things that not the normal person has done. So I can't be mad at this. So I always feel like a kid in a candy store when you walk the lot and you see just actors like Angelina Jolie was shooting a movie on the lot when I was there. I was going to get my lunch and I saw her walking down the lot. It's like, oh my God, this is so crazy. You know, so you definitely feel fortunate.
What are the colors though of the interior?
No colors. It's like how we have our studio here. It's like that. It's like lots of lights, lots of, you know, gray floors. We do have set design for each show. You will be amazed at what we can make in this country. It's amazing. So, any other questions? Yes.
You're someone who loves words, just from what you've described your background as. How do you feel about putting words onto the screen? Does it always translate the way you want it to?
So no. So I'm a person, for my friends in here, know that I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I hate when I have like a way that I see the actors saying it when I'm writing it, and then I'll get what we call dailies back, and they say it an entirely different way. I'm like, what the? That's not, you know, or they left the word out that was like important, and like, oh my God. So I try my best to be on set when they're shooting my stuff, because if I don't like what they're saying, then I'll like scoot over there and you find a nice way to talk to you. You're like, hey, you know, blah, 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 blah. Can you say, maybe if you say it a little bit more like this. They are sensitive about their stuff, let me just tell you. So you really have to find a way to like, I've been doing it a long time, so I know how to do it. But yeah, it makes you crazy because you do grow attached. But again, it's the lesson you gotta always do is like not to be married to anything, because it is a process. your boss could decide in the edit room, I don't need that scene. I literally called my boss. I was like, I didn't see a scene in here what happened to that scene? She goes, I know, I had to cut it because we have time stuff. I was like, damn it. So, you really can't get married to anything because it's like any other thing. It's just a job. It's getting it out there. So, but we as creative people get really attached to it, and you really can't. Somebody had their hand up over here, Terry?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about, or what Asya was saying about representation in the writing room. Do you feel like in certain shows, like you were saying how, you were writing for Friends, you couldn't be a black writer in that room. Do you think that that's more so because of culture, like the cultural impact of having a black writer on writing about white friends, or?
No, I think that people are comfortable. I think, people are comfortable with their tribe, right? So like when it comes to hiring people, I mean, it's the same thing for women, speaking to the woman part of this, there's not enough women showrunners in the business. There's not enough women creators. They just don't hire us at the same rate that they hire men. And if there were more women in charge, I was fortunate enough to work for a woman on this last show, they hire women, right? And so, because they understand the need for balance and they don't want to be the only woman there. But when you have, and not just like men, but when you have men in charge, they also hire other guys. And they're like, oh yeah, I guess I got to hire a woman. And they might hire one or they might hire two. But you won't have as many as you should. So we're still definitely fighting. We have a women's committee within the Writers Guild. I'm going to the Writers Guild Awards next weekend because the woman who created Living Single, who I worked for, she's getting the highest honor. She's only the second black person to ever win this award. Her name is Yvette Lee Bowser, who created Living Single. Shonda Rhimes, who created Grey's Anatomy and Scandal and Bridgerton and a million other things. She was the only other person to have won this award in the history of the Guild. So it's a big deal. So all of the people who she kind of hired in their first jobs and mentored, we're all bought a table there so we can all go and support her because there's never any real representation at these things. So we're going out there to do that. But it's definitely not easy. As a woman, you have lots of sacrifices that you make in order to make it in this business, as in most professions, but specifically this one, because of the time commitment that you have to get to it. It's like most times you're up writing late at night. Again, Shalay is one of my best friends, and she lives only a few blocks away from me. And she's always like, oh my God, how are you up so late? You need to go to bed. I'm like, because I have to write. It's the only time when we can. It's a beast. And so you, as a woman, you have to really evaluate, whether it's worth it, how much you want to give to it. But we have the same desires as our male counterparts to succeed in, careers like this. So it is a sacrifice. Yes.
So the question is about the script, like the scene that you showed. How do you determine like how many sentences or like the dialogue that you have to put in like in a specific part, not to prolong it, and like how you come up with the dialogue that in the last one will like very hard hitting.
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I try to teach my students too across the board is you know what you want to say before you begin to write it, right? So you have to think of the most economical way to say it because each second on the screen is money, right? And it's the same thing with print. It's the same way with any kind of TV or anything that you do. It's finding the shortest way to get to what you're trying to say in the scene. So I know ahead of time what I'm trying to hit. I'm trying to hit that these two are coming together in this moment that's very rare for them. So that was a big story point to make them. They're usually on the opposite sides, not having very good things to say about each other, but giving them this important moment. And so how can I play that out? And so you have creative liberty. I came up with the whole thing about her cooking something, bringing to her. What you guys didn't see before this is that she's pregnant. She had to be rushed to the hospital because the stress of her daughter missing spiked her blood pressure. And they told her that she had to go on bed rest and really take it easy. So Poppy's coming over with a banana pudding. Bananas are good for, has potassium, it's good to bring blood pressure down. So came up with all that. So you do have creative license, and the whole conversation about how I hate God. So we know that we want them to come together in the scene. It starts out with them being cold and icy, and then at the end they come together. You have creative license to come up with it and do it, but you got lots of scenes in the show to get to, so you got to say it in the shortest way possible. I love this scene because she cried. Like any scene you can write where people cry. I have so many scenes coming up this Friday in my episode that I just adore. Let me just tell you, so you guys gotta watch for me, please. I really am so excited about it because it's a horrible episode in terms of what happens, but I love the emotion of it, and I just love it's how we deal with each other all the time. I love the realness of it, so that's why I like storytelling. Anything else? Mandy, I don't know if am I supposed to talk about anything in particular?
Yes. Thank you so much, Professor Payton. And what I was going to suggest is that anyone who wants to stick around and ask more intimate questions, would you be willing to?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you. I'm so nervous. That's why I'm a writer and not in front of the scenes, because I get too nervous. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.